Hey everybody, I wanted to just kind of go over briefly some of the stuff from my last video. I've actually refined my research question a little bit just because I felt it was more measurable when put this way. So my research question is, would including a third option for gender identity within the electronic health record improve the quality of care for patients who identify as trans? So this could be measured by would it increase the patient approval rating once it was implemented in the EHR system? How professionals felt about the retrieval of information, whether it was easier to interpret or understand what the gender selection was referring to, and then how it would affect providers' confidence in treating those patients who are trans or non-binary. So in my last video, I did go over some of the ways that quality of care could be improved. One of the ways was with lab testing, like reducing errors when it comes to the sex and name used for the lab testing. And then providing more accurate and timely lab results. And the less errors means that the hospital would be able to save money. The research that I've read says that there's not an adverse effect for collecting sexual orientation and gender identity information, just that if a person does identify as a minority person, whether it be because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, that they're more likely to say that they have a better relationship with their provider, where if a person doesn't identify as a minority, it doesn't affect how they view their relationship with their provider. I hope that made sense. I don't know, I feel like I could have worded that one maybe a little bit better. But basically, for people who aren't a minority, it doesn't affect the relationship, but for people who do, it improves the relationship when they collect that information. So with my research question, the methodology design would be observational. That's because it is a specific culture, which would be trans people in specific, or a minority group in general, which falls under ethnography. So I would be able to detect patterns in how people who are trans or gender nonconforming view the quality of their care, and that'd be based on whether the practice they attended collected or had a third gender option for the gender information they collected and stored in the electronic health record. Another piece of this would be evaluation. That's just because I would be able to survey whether a trans person would be more likely to attend another appointment at the same place if at the beginning of their appointment they were given a third gender option on say like the intake form or through discussion, where then that could be stored in the EHR. I would also be able to survey whether healthcare professionals found understanding the sex and gender information in the EHR easier to interpret. And I'd be able to see how it affected healthcare workers' confidence in providing care to trans individuals. So if I wanted to take it even further, I could establish cause and effect with an experimental design to see whether the third gender identity information in the EHR improved patient attendance of appointments. which would also indicate an improved quality of care for that person. Some of the literature I wanted to go over, I do have some notes here. I felt like maybe I skimmed over it a little bit last video, so I did want to provide some more information. The studies do indicate that using inclusive language on and having demographic forms helps to balance clinical attention on gender, and that people who disclose their gender identity are associated with having a health screening in the past 3 years, which would indicate that they're able to better take care of their health, being able to actually get to the doctor, and that when providers who specialize in cancer were given a survey, only 49.5% correctly answered knowledge questions specific to LGBTQ health needs. So this is still something where even just having that third option for gender, we'd be able to collect more data to see what specifically that group of trans people, what healthcare needs they need, where there's a gap in care right now. So 70% of participants preferred an intake form as the method of disclosure. So I think that's important to note too. Excuse me. The Institute of Medicine in 2011 did a report on the health of LGBT people, and they pointed out that there is still limited health data. So again, having this third gender option would just be able to help us collect data. And then this one I'm going to put a link for, came out in 2021. It says it's estimated that 0.6% of the adult population, or 1.4 million people, identify as transgender, and approximately 31% of transgender Americans lack access to regular medical care. And then it says, additionally, 22% of transgender Americans avoid healthcare due to concerns of discrimination. So providing that third gender option could lead to people building better rapport with healthcare professionals, just because they the gender would be acknowledged, I guess, would be a good way to say that. And then, of course, the collection of sexual orientation and gender identity information in healthcare is recommended by both the Joint Commission and Department of Health and Human Services. Now, any facility that uses EHRs does have the ability to collect this information, according to the Joint Commission. But my proposal is that having that third gender option would lead to improved quality of care for trans individuals. And then there were some definitions that I wanted to go over, just to kind of show why it would be important to have that third gender option in the electronic health record. One of these definitions, which I'll put a link for these two, is sex gender slippage. which is the frequent substitution of sex and sex-related terms for gender and vice versa, often reflecting an underlying assumption of the concordance of sex and gender. So by having that third option and be able to clear that up, what exactly the M or F or say, I don't know, X meant within the record. And then there's sex confusion, which is the fact that any given sex variable holds many different potential meanings. Could mean assigned sex at birth or current sex, and it may not particularly correspond to anatomy or hormones. So it would make that more specific. And then sex obsession or, excuse me, the inquiries related to sex and gender is often thought to specifically be the sex assigned at birth, where it can mean more than that. So it'd be another way to distinguish that and reduce confusion. So I will put a link to that in also. I think it's starting to become more clear how that third gender option would be able to improve quality of care for trans people. So we'll keep going. See you guys.